Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians, lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host. We're broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, and the belly of the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis, St. Paul, where fraud runs rampant, and all of us here try to stop it. Though sometimes you got to think, can you vote yourself out of this? I don't know. Politicians are corrupt on both sides of the aisle. That's what makes our show different. We call them out on both sides. Listen, if you just want standard red team talking points, you came to the wrong show, buddy. It's not here. It's not here. Now, granted, I get along a lot better with people on the right because I would consider myself someone on the right, although I'm pro-liberty, like across the board. But, there's really not much hope in the Democrat Party. I don't see, RFK maybe represented some bit of hope in the Democrat Party. Not that I agree with RFK on every issue, but look what they did to him. I mean, like, they just did everything they could to eliminate him as even a potential candidate. And so then he came over. I don't know if he came over, but he joined the Trump ticket. And now he is, in the cabinet of a Republican president. So, like, the Democrats offer us absolutely zero hope, but it doesn't mean just the people on the right, the right, are great. The political class is the problem. Like, if you want to boggle down my views these days, I am pro the common man. I think the political class is our enemy. It's not some protester in Minneapolis, although sometimes these guys are being paid by the political class to do this kind of stuff, or the instigators, or the global elites. But the guy across the street that maybe votes the wrong way is not our enemy. It's the people trying to run the show. That's how I view things. Welcome back to our show, by the way. We got a big one for you. We're going to get into Michele Tafoya, who just announced her candidacy for U.S. Senate. My thoughts on it, what we know. And we're going to talk a little bit about these arrests that are happening right now as we speak in Minneapolis. And I'm not talking about ICE arresting illegal immigrants. I'm talking about American citizens now being arrested, protesters being arrested, asshole protesters, by the way, the ones that shut down the church. However, the law that's being used seems to be a law that could be used against just about everybody, especially those criminals on Washington, D.C. It's really interesting to see that. We're going to get into that law and show you that story. There's so much to get into. We got to thank our sponsor today, Alpine Catchery in the great city of St. Cloud, Minnesota, far away from the zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Great area in St. Cloud, although they do have their problems. I was just talking to someone about that the other day. They have their problems up in St. Cloud, but it's a much better place up there. Also brought to you by EliteGuardianMN.com. If you want to join us and be a supporter of the show, click on the link on Rumble. It says join us. You can be a premium insider, or go to truthhurtsnews.com if you're watching after the fact. Before I get too far, I better make sure that I do share this on my Facebook. Wish there was an easier way. There we go. Promote on Facebook. We're on X, YouTube, Rumble. I hope a lot of you guys are watching some of our new content here. That's on YouTube. We're doing videos now every day, and I appreciate everyone that goes and watches that. Helps us out tremendously. Okay, let's get into this. Michele Tafoya, former NFL sidelines reporter. You guys probably remember NBC News, NBC Sports. So used to on this show saying NBC News. It's NBC Sports. She was a sideline reporter for many years. Familiar face. A lot of us knew that she was getting involved in politics. We talked about her a little bit on the show. She announced she's going to run for U.S. Senate here in Minnesota. This announcement came yesterday. Let's go ahead and let's watch Michele's introduction video.
For years, I covered the biggest football games in America. I walked the sidelines when the pressure was mounting and the stakes were the highest. That job taught me about more than football. It taught me about how leadership really works. When leaders are prepared and accountable, teams succeed. When they aren't, people pay the price. When I look at Minnesota and Washington today, I see politicians selling out honest, hardworking people like you. I see massive government fraud exploding on Tim Walz's watch, ripping off taxpayers and embarrassing our state. I see radical ideologies being forced into our schools and sports, putting young women and their teammates in danger. I see politicians undermining and attacking police officers, then making excuses when crime rises and communities suffer. And I see middle-class families paying more while working harder just to stay afloat. For too long, hardworking people have been ripped off by
It's interesting she used purple.
corporations and career politicians. And the people doing everything right are the ones paying the biggest price. Well, I'm not going to stay on the sideline.
By the way, I'm just going to quit. Just it could mean nothing. Okay. She made her career in the NFL. So maybe she's using purple because it's the Vikings color. Okay. Could be simply that. Although hold on one second. Her website definitely doesn't have yellow in it. Purple could be Prince. Boy, we love Prince here in Minnesota. But you can't ignore the fact that in politics, purple usually means moderate, right? Because you got the red, you got the blue, and purple is what happens when you mix those colors. Interesting use. Could just be she's a woman, and purple or pink are generally colors that are associated with the feminine characteristics. So could be that too. Okay. It's just interesting. It's purple. Let's continue on.
Are the ones paying the biggest price. Well, I'm not going to stay on the sidelines any longer. Starting today, I'm running for the United States Senate. As Minnesota Senator, I will clean up the system, fighting corruption, ending the fraud, and protecting your tax dollars. I will protect what's fair and safe, standing with our law enforcement officers, deporting dangerous criminals, and keeping female sports for female athletes. And I will make our lives affordable again, cutting middle-class taxes, strengthening American manufacturing, and lowering the cost of groceries, prescription drugs, and mortgages and rent. I hear the same message everywhere I travel. Minnesotans are yearning for common sense leadership again. It's time for a political outsider and a reformer with a real plan for working families. I'll ask the tough questions and demand honest answers. Our campaign is bigger than right versus left. It's about confidence over corruption. The pressure is mounting again, and the stakes could not be higher. It's time to bring our state together and look to the future with pride. If you're looking for new ideas, real results, and big change, I'm Michele Tafoya, and I'm ready to lead.
All right. I laugh so much because, I just think politics is all so phony. The older I get, it's just so phony. And I've been part of those commercial shoots, and it's just like, you setting up these scenes, and we all fall prey to them. We're all tricked. I mean, hell, you go to movies or watch them on Netflix, they're acting, right? So we just fall prey to it. But because so much of politics is acting, right? There isn't sincerity. I just see these commercials that just like, oh God. Right. But that's just me personally. That's nothing, I mean, everyone does it, right? Even the good ones. Well, there's a few of those. Razzle Dazzle says the truth hurts. That's just opinion. Maybe it's a little bit of truth there. Okay. Anyhow, let's talk about Michele Tafoya. Made her career as a sports commentator, sideline reporter. Very well spoken, right? Presentable. Okay. I think she's 61. Looks pretty good for a 61-year-old, right? Obviously, you don't get where she got unless you're able to think on your feet and able to speak fluently. I know I'm saying something that doesn't seem, like a big take, but at the same point, literally, you have probably two of the front runners, kind of the front runners or top tier candidates running for governor who don't have that skill. Lisa Damuth and Kendall Qualls. Like, they're constantly fumbling over their words. They don't seem like to think well on their feet. They're just regurgitating talking points, especially Lisa Damuth. So it's like kind of like a bit of freshness to see somebody that actually doesn't have that problem. You kind of expect that the liberals certainly have people. Now, at the same point, we have a sitting U.S. Senator, Shaky Amy, who does pretty poorly too. Like, when you look at Shaky Amy, you're like, how is this person like impressive? And it's not just the Democrats. Mitch McConnell, my God, how did that guy ever get into the U.S. Senate? What are we talking about? So sometimes it's just a breath of fresh air to have someone that's presentable and looks somewhat normal. She's there drinking a beer with people, and of course the beer is completely full. So she's probably not really drinking it. She's more like a red wine kind of gal, maybe a white wine. I don't know. It goes back and forth. Um, Maybe she's not the person you sit down and have a beer with, but at the same point, relatable to some degree, likable, very likable. You know, that's how she got a lot of these interviews. Well, I mean, I think the players are obliged to give her an interview, but I don't think they disliked giving interviews to her on the sidelines. I always can imagine one of the worst interviews to give as a coach or a player. They usually do this with coaches in the NFL is uh, an interview right coming out of halftime or right before the game. Like that would suck. I would hate to do that. Like I got some important stuff to do. I got to go talk to you, but it promotes the game and it gets the interest. It brings the audience in. The NFL is getting so distanced from that now. It's fun watching other sports like the UFC that are really more engaging with their audience. But they still do that in the NFL, and that's good. So, that to me, Razzle Dazzle says, good looking and talented, undisputable with Michele, right? Okay, let's just be honest with that. Sorry, I'm trying to read a comment here. Mark says, does she know football's rigged? I don't know about that. If football's rigged, you're saying Caleb Williams, that throw was pre-orchestrated. He's backed up to like the 40-yard line. I don't know about that. Let's go to our website here. This is Michele Tafoya's website. Very purple themed. Okay. I call it like I see it. Time to lead the fight for Minnesota. Add it. There's her video. All the donation things. Meet Michele. No issues page. Just a way to volunteer, a way to donate. By the way, that's got to be the St. Croix River. I mean, does that not look like the St. Croix River? Love it. Boy, if I studied this picture long enough, I might even know what part of the St. Croix that is. Love that. Meet Michele. Michele is a 4-time Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, record-setting NFL sideline reporter, and now a political and cultural commentator focused on accountability, integrity, and family-first leadership. Talks about her time in the NFL, covering it. Over the course of her career, Tafoya became the most honored national television sideline reporter in the U.S. sports history. More about her work. But after years on the sidelines, Tafoya felt called to step into a new arena. Quote from her, now Tafoya is bringing that same straight talk approach to politics. She believes Minnesota dominate national headlines, embarrass the state she loves. Minnesotans built their communities on honest, hard work, strong families, and shared values, not backroom deals and career politicians to out the people they are supposed to serve. Remember that line right there. When Tafoya looks at Minnesota and Washington today, she sees hardworking families being left behind while politicians protect themselves. She's ready to fight back, standing for real accountability, fiscal responsibility, secure border, law and order, and policies that put Minnesota families first. After years of asking tough questions on the sideline, not really. Those are the sports questions. They're not hard questions on the sideline. Michele Tafoya is stepping up to lead, determined to help restore integrity, reclaim Minnesota's reputation, and show the nation what resilient, principled leadership looks like. Nothing about her family. Also, nothing about her religious beliefs. Just interesting right there. Okay, and we don't have an issues page. All right, show's over. This was about what does Michele Tafoya stand for? I guess we don't know, do we? In full disclosure, knowing that I was going to talk about this, I did reach out to her campaign today. I did not hear back. I did offer them a 30-minute slot on here. Now, this show is called The Truth Hurts, okay? Here's the deal. Obviously, Michele Tafoya is going to be liked by the establishment. Tim Scott, former Senator Tim Scott, has already endorsed her. He's in charge of the NRSC. Sorry, did I say former senator? He is still a senator, isn't he? Tim Scott is still the senator. Oh, my God, Jake. Pretend like you know what you're talking about. Tim Scott, still a United States senator. He's a former candidate for president. He's in charge of NRSC, the National Republican Senate Committee. So you'd imagine she's their candidate. Of course she's their candidate. Of course that she is. We don't need an issues page. We don't need to know where she stands on the issues. She's got a good smile and probably could win. Now, with that being said, I do think she has broad appeal. Let's be honest, most voters don't go through the issues like we do. okay? And before I go into this any further, let me explain to you how I view people running for national politics at this point. I think Washington D.C. is pretty much beyond fixable. Okay, here's why I think that. All right, first of all, I don't know if you guys know us. We're $38 trillion in debt, and we're continuing to run $2 trillion deficits. So we're adding to that. Okay, and so we had a president for 4 years who wasn't running the show. He was not cognizant enough to be the president of the United States, and yet he was the president of the United States. I know they had auto pens, but it was worse than that. I mean, there were people making big moves in the name of Joe Biden, and it wasn't Joe Biden. To the point where I'm convinced Joe Biden didn't even drop out of the presidential race. They tweeted it out and said, "What are you going to do now, Joe?" That's how it's going to be. And then here enters Donald Trump, and I voted for Donald Trump, and I get duped into voting for Donald Trump to some degree, in my opinion, because this is where I'm kind of standing on the issue now. Because, when I see that this lawfare against him and the assassination attempt and all that kind of stuff, I go, oh my God, Donald Trump might actually drain the swamp. Like, if there's ever a point in history where someone's going to do literally America first and stop propping up the swamp, it's this guy right here, Donald Trump. This is our best shot. And it's not that he hasn't done some pretty important stuff. RFK has, certainly, and definitely done a good job on the border, closing down the border. Okay. But what are we doing overseas? We're getting into more wars, right? And we're talking about a $1.5 trillion defense budget. What? $2 trillion budget deficits? Won't release the Epstein files. What about that? Audit of the gold at Fort Knox? Whatever happened to that? What happened to Doge? Why are you doing the things you're doing, Donald Trump? And I come to the conclusion that maybe you could say Donald Trump's a fraud. You could say that. I don't know. Maybe he was never sincere, or he's incapable of doing what he wanted to do, which he campaigned on and won overwhelmingly. And it seems like it's probably the latter. And if it's the latter, that's pretty scary. I mean, if it was just him defrauding us, and just being another phony politician and just really good at acting at that, then, all right, I got duped, move on. But I don't think so. I think it was Donald Trump can't get the things he wants to get done. And if that's the case, Washington, D.C. is a lost cause. Why would I vote? Why do I care about voting in federal politicians? And that's going to be the big appeal to the Republican base about Michele Tafoya in Minnesota. That's what they're going to do. She can win. Michele Tafoya is the best person we have to win. Why the oh God, I got to put dollars in here. I got my swear jar. Why the F do I care about that? Sorry, I'm trying to censor because I know people watch this with their kids and stuff like that. So I'm sorry. And I've had grandmothers and mothers correct me on that. So sorry, call it my old way of talking in the Army. I'll be careful. Right. But why do I care about winning a Senate race unless the person that gets elected is going to fundamentally change the way Washington, D.C. is done? Okay? There's a reason I've interviewed Royce White many times. Now, Royce, I'm not certain he knows where he stands on all the issues. He's right on a lot of core issues, and I don't know if I fully have figured out Royce White. But the thing about Royce is he is not running on your just standard talking points. I think he understands the problems at the Federal Reserve. I think he understands military intervention, the problems of forever wars, okay? All right? So that gets me interested when people like that talk the way they talk. But when you're not running on that kind of stuff and you don't seem like you're going to fundamentally change the way Washington, D.C. is being run, why do I even give a shit about your campaign? Because you're just doing it for yourself. Oh, well, we need to win statewide. Why do we need to win statewide and send another person out in Washington, D.C. that's going to vote for $2 trillion budget deficits, military intervention overseas, not fixing Social Security, Medicare, all these things. Why? Why do I care about that? I don't, and neither should you. And if voting for presidency doesn't ultimately change how corrupt and bad Washington D.C. is, why even vote for president anymore? It's a foolish errand, right? Now, I think you should vote locally, and I think there's plenty of things that we can get done locally. That's why I focus a lot of energy on the local stuff. But when it comes to people running for office, out in the federal government, I need to see something different. That's me. And I think it's a lot of people, actually, certainly the audience here, but people that just stop voting because they don't think it represents change. Okay, but there are going to be people that vote, and Michele Tafoya will probably reach over and grab some of those independent people. You just don't get me interested because, you're the best person to win. Okay, let's enter in on some of the issues. Okay, what we do know about Michele Tafoya, in her own words, is she's pro-choice. This is a video she cut on her channel a couple years ago. No, wait, is this a couple years ago? I think it was 2022. Oh, yeah, 1 year ago. Here we go.
It's abortion, stupid. You know the old phrase, it's the economy, stupid, about what drives elections, what drives voters? Well, right now it might be it's the border, stupid. But in 2022, it was abortion. In the wake of Roe v. Wade being struck down by the Supreme Court, everyone went crazy. Hair was on fire. They're going to ban abortion. And some people threatened to ban abortion. Here in my home state of Minnesota, one of the guys running for governor said, we're going to ban abortion. Dumb, 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 dumb. Just stupid. Republicans, if they want to win anything in the future, better get their messaging right on abortion. Because guess what? Pro-lifers aren't going to suddenly vote Democrat if the Republicans get a little more liberal on abortion. And now this Alabama...
By the way, it's really interesting to hear someone who grew up in sports commentary then all of a sudden lecture us about politics. It's like, dumb, dumb, dumb. Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what you're talking about. And her logic there is pro-lifers won't vote for Democrats all of a sudden. Well, guess what? Democrats won't also vote pro-choicers won't all of a sudden vote Republicans either, right? Like it goes both ways, What's the point in having views? What's the point in principles if you don't stand up for those principles? Okay? Now, you could make that argument she's not standing up for or that she doesn't even profess to have those principles, and I think that's true. Let me go to the 250 mark because she actually explains what she thinks on the abortion issue. 1 second here.
For being pro-life. I personally am pro-choice to a point. I don't think you should be able to abort a child at 9 months, that kind of thing. I think reasonable minds can agree. But see, people...
Okay, so we know her views on abortion is it's fine up to 9 months, right? Like, what? Now, I did find it interesting. On her website, it doesn't talk about her family, and it doesn't talk about the church she goes to, religion. Like, if you're not from Minnesota, a lot of times that's how people talk. When they run for office, they talk about the church they belong to. Community member. That kind of stuff. No mention of it. Maybe she's not even a Christian. I'm just gonna be honest with you. She'll never do the show because she's got professional help, and they go, there's too much risk to doing this show because Jake will ask you those tough questions. And by the way, when it comes to voting in a federal election, I probably don't even place at this stage the abortion issue really high on my list of things. Because look, I voted for Donald Trump, and I don't really think he's that pro-life. I think he said it, but I mean, that guy was on record once being for partial birth abortion. Right? And I say this because I don't know at this point what the feds will have to do with it. It's going to be something that's done at the state level. Because essentially Roe v. Wade being overturned has kicked it back down to the states. But it is interesting, like, how do you fundamentally see the world? And you seem to be really wrong on the issue of life. That seems to be a big, because, life begins at some point. I think we need to define when that point starts. And it's definitely not, 9 months. I don't think anyone believes that. She goes on in this show here. Let's go.
So I've had friends say to me, you know what? Republicans should just give that issue to Democrats. Just say, yep, fine. We're out of the abortion business. We're not, maybe we're pro-life personally, but we believe in abortion. Let's make it legal, safe, and rare, whatever. Give it up so that the Democrats don't have it to use again. Because here's the thing, is even if you're staunchly pro-life, how are you going to vote if Democrats are staunchly pro-choice? You going to vote with them? No, you're not. So the Republicans are going to lose the pro-life vote. They're not.
Yeah, they will.
And I think there are these forces way up high with a lot of money that say you cannot have my support unless you are adamantly pro-life. This is dumb. Look,
I think actually there's less of that than the alternative, which is grassroots people that go, you don't get my vote unless you're pro-life. Once again, I don't think this is the most pressing federal issue anymore. It's been kicked down to the states in many regards. So I'd put more weight on this for like a gubernatorial candidate. But it still just makes you wonder how she sees the world when she seems to get this wrong. But even more importantly, probably not more importantly, but it's interesting to hear her lecture, coming from nowhere in politics, us on that issue. But I think even at this point, she's probably realized she was going to run for higher office, and therefore she needed to get her head around this one because it's a vulnerability. The pro-life movement is huge, especially in Minnesota politics. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention there are fraudulent groups that pretend to be pro-life, MCCL being that one, who literally cut a commercial with her selling out on the pro-life issue. MCCL is called Minnesota Concerned Citizens for Life. This was a commercial they did in, was this 2022? No, this was last year. Last year's election, 2024. It's already 2026. This was a 2024 election. Listen to this.
I've been in the media long enough to know a spin cycle when I see one. Democrats are running ads saying Republicans will ban abortions. Really? I know sometimes women have to make difficult decisions, but I also know Minnesotans want reasonable abortion laws. The truth is, the state Supreme Court has already ruled. Any abortion ban would immediately be declared unconstitutional, period. So when the Dems say there's going to be a ban, they're lying to you.
Okay, that's actually a pro-life group, believe it or not, in Minnesota, hiring a pro-choice, at that point she wasn't a candidate, a pro-choice person to cut a commercial undermining their movement. We talked it, you can go back in our videos. We talk about this thing all the time. MCCL hates us, talk smack about us. We call them out. Two chicken shit there come on the show and defend their case, by the way. So, but that's a big sellout to your movement. It's like us bringing someone that was like for Governor Walz's lockdown orders during COVID and saying, I know sometimes governors need to make the tough choice. It's like, what? No, I wouldn't say that. First of all, I don't believe that, but I wouldn't do that to our people. Like, no, they trust us to move the ball forward for the anti-lockdown community. Like that, they are for the Never Again bill. MCCL has got a bunch of pro-life people that supports them, and then they throw a commercial like that. It's insanity. Okay, well, that's what we know. I mean, we've all known this about this. Michele Tafoya also wrote an open letter telling Governor Donald Trump not to run. An open letter. This is November 10th of 2022. So real ahead of now, just for the record, I was also in the camp of I'd like to see someone else other than Donald Trump. Dear President Trump, I'm going to take a lot of heat for this, but here it goes. Please don't run for president again. You probably don't care about my opinion in your eyes. And I'm guessing here I'm just a washed up, has been sports reporter who's got a little podcast. In short, a loser. But you should care about my opinion. After all, I'm an American and you say you love America. And if you genuinely love America, you should put our future above your own. You did some great things for the United States during your 4 years in the White House, and then goes on to talk about some of the great things. But your politics were messy. There's no question Biden has made an unmitigated disaster of the country. People want change, but not chaos. Chaos has worked for you. You've mastered the art of creating what I'll call constructive chaos. When you defeated Hillary Clinton, your disruptiveness was bold and welcome. But America is tired. We are tired of disorder. We want normalcy. We want unity. We want some peace and quiet. We want decency. We've endured the lockdown state of the pandemic. We've endured an inexcusable, unacceptable crisis at the southern border. We've endured blah, 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 blah. Mr. President, if you run again, there will be relitigation January 6th. There will be screaming and yelling about MAGA Republicans. There will be name calling. There will be insults. Civility will take another brain rattling hit. There will be more division, and people will point to your age. You'll be 78 in 2024. We have seen how age can lead to cognitive decline. No one is immune. About half the country loves you. The other half can't stand you or are afraid of you. Meanwhile, there is a deep bench of promising young, diverse candidates that America on the whole will be considering. Rubio, Haley, Tim Scott, Glenn Youngkin, Kristi Noem. You could be the kingmaker. You're still incredibly popular, millions and millions. Okay. All right. Once again, who is she to have this great commentary in politics? Couldn't have been more wrong on all that stuff. Yes, they used that against him. He still won. Not shocking, by the way. My issues with Donald Trump and why I was sympathetic to someone else's run is because I didn't think Donald Trump was really going to do enough. He was wrong on some really important issues. And he got a lot wrong during COVID, including fast-tracking a vaccine that was very deadly and not doing stuff when our rights were being trampled by governors. But that's not what her reason to write to Donald Trump was. Her reason is, we're going to lose. Look at you. You're too old. You're going to bring up the MAGA. It's all going to be about January 6th. You got it wrong, Michelle. You know, this is the person they bring out because they think she's going to win. So, that's Michelle. Now, where does she stand? Once again, none of this, I think, matters a whole ton. We've all been wrong on things, okay? I thought Donald Trump was going to be a lot better in this term, okay? I seem to be wrong on that. Boy, I really didn't think he was going to bundle the Epstein file. I'm just still shocked by that one. Okay? So, we could all be wrong in that stuff, but where do you stand on the issues? That's what we care about. And the problem is, I don't know how long she's going to go. It's going to be like the Kamala trick where we won't know. She did a lot of media on her first day and they were like easy media, like Fox News hit Riley Gaines. I mean, Riley Gaines isn't a tough interviewer. This is the Riley Gaines interview. Play a clip of this real quick.
So what needs to be fixed? I mean, when you win, what are the issues in Washington, D.C. That will be a priority for you?
Well, I think the main priority is the word that everyone talks about, right? It's affordability. But the middle class is in crisis, particularly here in Minnesota. I mean, they're being crushed by taxes. And, you know, some prices are still too high. It's good to see gasoline at the lowest prices in 5 years. It's good to see GDP up. But we still got to continue to bring prescription drug prices down. We've got to get groceries down a little bit lower. Things need to be affordable. Rent, mortgage, energy, those things need to be affordable for middle-class families. So that is all very important. I would say healthcare as well. The Affordable Care Act isn't affordable. So we need to work on those things and give power and transparency back to the citizens instead of having all these layers and layers of bureaucracy that fatten up the education system, that fatten up the healthcare system, and keep, you know, just sort of widening this divide between the people and the actual product. So those are things we can certainly work on when I'm in the Senate.
Okay, so you notice how she really didn't say anything? I mean, she said a lot, but didn't say anything. And other than taking a stab at the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, and maybe the comment about education, you could easily hear a Democrat candidate say the exact same thing. Okay, so she's stating facts. Things are unaffordable. We need more transparency. right? We need to bring down prices. Great. What led to those prices going up? And then what are you going to do to ensure that they don't continue to go up? I don't think she knows. Do you? I mean, I don't think she's got answers for that. I don't think she's got big policy aims. I watched a couple other interviews. I don't see it. It's certainly not on the website. I don't see bold ideas. This is where I come down on federal elections. I think Washington, D.C. is almost beyond saving. So if I even care to get involved, I want a candidate who's going to fundamentally change the way that Washington, D.C. is operating. And I think that is not Michele Tafoya from what I see. I've invited her on the show. She can make her case here. We'll have a hard conversation. What did we have? We had Am Schwartzy on the show and Royce a couple times. And Royce obviously goes a lot of different places. You know, I want to have Adam Schwartzy back on. I know he reached out to me over Christmas break. So actually, you know what would be fun? I should have him on. We need to do an icebreakers episode. Go ice fishing. Maybe that's what we'll do. But that's where I approach federal politics is you better come at it with some fundamental changes to the way things are done. And I just don't see that. Now, once again, that's me. That's probably you. That's not how the parties work. The parties are excited. The NRSC is excited. Here's the Republican Party of Minnesota. They found it amongst themselves to release a statement yesterday about Michele Tafoya running, letting everyone know that she's joined and stepped forward to engage in this important race. This has created a little bit of controversy inside the party because the party is supposed to be neutral, and you know how it's going right now. Party in Republican Party of Minnesota not doing very well, not raising any money, struggling to find new activists, don't really stand for much of anything. And they find this new candidate that emerges who's got some celebrity status, who's very polar opposite with a core issue of the Republican Party, like literally in their stated party platform. But they use their X account to make sure they promote the fact that she's running. We know, let's be honest, here we cut the bullshit out and we just tell you how things are going. They want her to be the candidate. They think that'll help the top ticket. They might not be wrong on that, right? She might have broad appeal. She might be able to win. She might bring in big donors, certainly national donors. Let's see here. Brad says a lot of people are going off on ice. The thuggery needs to stop. I'm going to get into that here in just a second here. Fox 9 new post on Klobuchar governor. Do we have breaking news? Okay, let's go break into this here. Let's see if Klobuchar is running. I was just going to mention this today on the show. NPR says, okay, New York Times, Amy Klobuchar files paper to run for governor. Well, we can fact check this right now. Let's do it live. How about that, guys? You can watch the sausage being made. This is the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board. We go to reports and data, and we go to candidates. And we could just type in Klobuchar, who has never been on here, and there you go, Amy Klobuchar governor candidate. Officers in context, and there you go. She's got a formal thing. Lee Sheehy is her chair. Samuel Clark is her treasurer. mbacg.com. That's the website. What is that? Oh, I guess, what is that? Maybe some consulting firm. There you go. amyklobuchar.com. Paid for it. Has this been changed to governor yet? Okay, that doesn't say anything about governor. The website hasn't caught up yet, I guess. I don't see anything. Yeah. Well, it looks like it's in limbo right now, but you saw it. She is a filed candidate under the CFB. There you go. Amy Klobuchar is running for governor of Minnesota. Unfortunately, no good. Shaky Amy. She's in. Failed Can't says, yeah, if Jesse doesn't want to be on air, he could be a good fact checker and help with comments. That's a great point. I like that idea. That's a very good idea. Failed candidate. This is pretty funny. What is the MBACG? Michael Broadcorp and Campaign Group. Oh, funny stuff. I don't know if everyone gets that one. All right, let's talk about ICE here. Oh, well, let me make sure I got everything on Michele Tafoya. Once again, if she comes on air or it says she'll do the show, we'll bring that to you guys. We'll let you know. I'm just making sure I got everything done. Yeah, for U.S. Senate. I guess to sum it all up, I think this is just another campaign of someone that is, I wouldn't say it's run of mill. She is their mini celebrity, and they view that as appealing to donors so you can raise a lot of money, and obviously lots of donations get you more airtime, which helps your electability, but also an appeal to the moderates, the middle, and then far beyond that importance there is where she actually stands on the issues. And so just my read, and I've never met Michele, at least I don't believe I have, is that she probably doesn't represent anything that's contrary to the status quo. Okay. But I'd love to be wrong on that. But all the media appearances I've watched, it's just your standard team red talking points. I would love to get into some foreign politics with her, find out where she stands on those issues, where she deviates with Donald Trump. I mean, what she thinks about Donald Trump. Is she humble enough to say she was wrong about that open letter? I'd be very curious. Do you think she's actually going to answer these questions? I think they're going to keep her into this like Fox News universe and just make these team red talking points and try to appeal to donors and not actually have to talk to a lot of us out there, independent media. And if that's the case, then I hope she fails tremendously at this run, because my hope is that alternative media, the new guys, are actually very important in this whole game. And obviously, when it came to the presidency, it was shown that they are, right? Kamala didn't do Joe Rogan, right? Seemed to be a big problem for her. So there's my thoughts on Michele Tafoya. Let's talk about ICE here. Okay. Let's start with this. This has got my blood boiling. I'll pull this up here. This is an article from CBS News. CBS News. AG Pam Bondi, 2 community leaders arrested over disruption of ICE pastors' church services. Attorney General Pam Bondi on Thursday announced that Nikema Levi Armstrong has been arrested in connection with the disruption of services at church where a local official with the U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement serves as a pastor. By the way, I covered this in a video a couple days ago. You can watch it. The incident, it's about Don Lemon. Don Lemon actually ended up covering that church protest. The incident happened on Sunday as the group joined services at the city's church in St. Paul before chanting "ICE out" and "Justice for Renee Good." One of the church's pastors, David Easterwood, leads the local ICE field office, and one of the leaders of the protest and prominent local activist Armstrong said she's also an ordained minister or pastor. And this is a tweet from Attorney General Pam Bondi. Minutes ago, my direction, HSI headquarters and FBI agents executed an arrest in Minnesota. So far, we have arrested Nikema Levi. Oops, didn't mean to click on that. Levi Armstrong, who allegedly played a key role in organizing the coordinated attack on City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. We will share more updates. Bondi also announced the arrest of Chantel Louisa Allen, an elected member of the St. Paul School Board. Okay, so this is what matters here. The law Bondi cited in an announcement, 18 U.S. Code 241 describes it pertaining to when, quote, 2 or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States. Are we serious? I think one of the biggest critiques of this Department of Justice is they haven't been arresting the criminals out in Washington, D.C. And there is literally a U.S. statute, U.S. Code 241, that says 2 or more persons can't conspire to oppress or threaten or intimidate any person in their free exercise of enjoyment of any right. Every freaking politician out in Washington, D.C. is guilty of this one, it seems like. What are you talking about? Like, that's just a law. This is Cornell's thing. They shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. And if death results from the acts committed in violation of this section, such acts include kidnapping, but that's not the case. But 10 years. I mean, listen, I'm not standing up for that protester. You can go back, you can watch my video commenting on Don Lemon's coverage, the activist journalist. Razzle says, are your videos on Roman? No, I'm putting them just on YouTube. It's just a better platform for that. So go to the YouTube channel and like and subscribe on the YouTube channel at Truth Hurts News. Just type in Truth Hurts News on there. But isn't it trespassing? Isn't that, I mean, like, isn't this, and by the way, we're the local cops in that. Like, if they're asked to leave and they don't leave, that's trespassing. Right? I don't think these people should be going away for up to 10 years for being assholes, right? Like, that seems ridiculous. It's a public place. It's a private entity, but open to the public, right? So someone could come into that church, right? Like, they don't prohibit people from coming. It's not trespassing when you walk into the doors of a church. But if you disrupt and then you refuse to leave, that is trespassing. That's criminal trespassing. That's fair, right? When they're asked to leave, they should leave. It's criminal trespassing. But what are we talking about? What is this? What is this law? I mean, seriously, if we're going to go after nobody activists, nobody protesters on something like this that says you can't injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person with their free exercise or enjoyment of rights, privilege secured to them by the Constitution, then where are the arrests of the criminals in Washington, D.C.? Where are the rest of the people at the IRS? Where are the criminals being arrested at every freaking agency? Why isn't Tim Walz? Why isn't Tim Walz being arrested for this? Why isn't Keith Ellison being arrested for this when they prohibited our rights? You want to talk about disrupting church? Tim Walz made it illegal to go to church services in the state of Minnesota. Why isn't Tim Walz being arrested for this very act? U.S. Code 241, conspiracy against rights. That was the whole thing of lockdown governors, was some massive conspiracy against yours and my rights. Why aren't they in handcuffs for 18 U.S. Code 241? But some nobody protesters are in handcuffs for it. Once again, not defending these protesters, bunch of assholes for doing what they did. But I don't care. My life hasn't fundamentally changed because some nobody is being arrested for disrupting a church service. Meanwhile, these politicians, these crooked politicians, right, these criminals in D.C. have done this to a larger scale. Joe Biden committed the largest infringement on freedom of speech in the history of the United States, censoring social media. Where are the guys at the FBI who conspired with the social media outlets like Facebook? Mark Zuckerberg admitted this on the Joe Rogan podcast. Twitter, which was admitted in the Twitter files. Where are those FBI agents that went to those social media platforms to infringe on the right to free speech? Why aren't they in handcuffs according to 18 U.S. Code 241? But nobody, protesters in Minneapolis are. That's a joke. Sorry, I was in St. Paul. St. Paul. Well, maybe they live in Minneapolis. Get my blood boiling right there. I hope you guys understand. I'm not. Jake needs a beer. Yeah, I need a beer. I need a beer. All I have is coffee, and it just gets me more ramped up. Maybe we need to start a petition. Arrest Keith Ellison, and let's go Jan Malcolm and Tim Walz and Peggy Flanagan for violating 18 U.S. Code 241 during COVID. How about that? All right. You asked for it. Was it Ganser that asked for me to talk about this? According to ABC News, U.S. citizens say ICE removed him from his Minnesota home in underwear after warrantless search. Federal immigration agents forced to open a door and detain a U.S. citizen in Minnesota home at gunpoint without warrant, then led him out to the streets in his underwear in sub-freezing conditions, according to family and videos reviewed by the Associated Press. Chong Lee Scott Tao told the AP that his daughter-in-law woke him up from a nap Sunday afternoon and said that U.S. Immigration Custom Enforcement agents were banging at the door of his residence in St. Paul. He told her not to open it. Mass agents then forced their way in and pointed guns at the family, yelling at them, Tao recalled. Quote, I was shaking, he said. They didn't show any warrant. They just broke down the door. Amid a massive surge of federal agents in the Twin Cities, immigration authorities are facing backlash from residents. You know that. ICE is not doing what they're saying they're doing, said, I'm not going to read her comment. Let's get to the crux of it. Tao, who has been a U.S. citizen for decades, said that he was being detained, said that as he was being detained, he asked his daughter-in-law to find his identification, but the agents told him they didn't want to see it. Instead, as his 4-year-old grandson watched and cried, Tao was led out in handcuffs, wearing only sandals and underwear, with just a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. Videos captured a scene which included people blowing whistles and horns and neighbors screaming at the more than a dozen gun-toting agents to leave Tao's family alone. Tao said agents drove him to the middle of nowhere and made him get out of the car in frigid weather. By the way, it was really cold that day, so they could photograph him. He said he feared they would beat him. He was asked for his ID, which agents earlier prevented him from retrieving. Okay, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security described the ICE operation at Tao's home as targeted operation seeking 2 convicted sex offenders. Quote, the U.S. citizens live with these 2 convicted sex offenders at the site of operations, DHS said. The individuals refused to be fingerprinted or facially ID'd. He matched the description of the targets. Tao's family said in a statement that it categorically disputes the DHS account and strongly objects to DHS's attempt to publicly justify this conduct with false and misleading claims. At the very end, it says DHS did not respond to requests from the Associated Press seeking the names of the 2 convicted sex offenders or why the agency believed they were present in Tao's home. This line right here, the individual refused to be fingerprinted or facially ID'd. He's in his own home, and they busted down the door, and then they arrested a U.S. citizen. Folks, we got a problem with this, don't we? We got a big problem with this. Like, these are federal agents. Like, it's becoming undeniable at this point what's going on here. ICE says its officers can forcibly enter homes during immigration operations without judicial warrants, according to a memo that was leaked to a U.S. senator. And then we have this here.
ICE tactics nationwide, a newly revealed.
Oops, sorry. I'm sorry. You guys, why was that not showing? Oh, sorry. First time. There we go. I was reading all that and you didn't even see it. Okay, here we go.
Shows the agency authorized its officers to enter homes without obtaining a warrant in some cases. CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camila Mahoya Galvez joins us right now. What more can you tell us?
Well, Lindsay, this is a major change in immigration policy. Historically, ICE has had a long-standing policy of directing and instructing its officers and agents to refrain from going into private property, including the homes of people they are targeting for arrest, if they do not have a judicial warrant signed by a judge that authorizes that search and seizure. Now the agency is arguing through this memo that has been disclosed from last year.
Okay, so there he is. See him in his underwear.
Can in fact enter private property, the residence of people who have final deportation orders without a judicial warrant. That is a significant change because, again, the Constitution has long been interpreted to mean that any law enforcement agency at the state, local, or federal level cannot enter private property without a judicial warrant. ICE is now arguing that, at least in the immigration context, it can do so in the cases of people who, again, have been ordered deported by an immigration judge or another court.
Okay, but the problem is you guys get it wrong, right? So there does need to be judicial warrant. Like, it's like one of those things. It's like you blow up a boat, let's just say off the coast of Venezuela, and you go, those are drug traffickers. It's like, were they? Like, how do you know that? Like, you're asserting that. Like, in America, and you could understand in war, you can't adjudicate all these kind of things. That's why war is different. That's why you should have a declaration of war by Congress. But when it comes to America, we have to follow the judicial process. You can't just say, well, that is an illegal alien. We can bust down the doors. No. What if it's not? What if it's the home or residence of somebody who is a legal U.S. citizen? And then they just refuse to give paperwork or fingerprinting, submit to that. Well, what do you think you would do if that was happening? And the reason I'm standing on this, I think you should be there with me standing against this kind of stuff, is because this will be inevitably used against you and me, right? Like I know you're just like me. You think that if you're here illegally, your rights are very subdued when it comes to America's legal and judicial system, right? Because you're not supposed to be here. I agree with that statement. But these are U.S. citizens. What ICE is doing is far beyond the scope of what we were told initially. And even if, this is the whole point in warrants, is sometimes they're wrong, and that's why it does need to be reviewed by a judge. But here, you don't need to take my word for it. This is Brooklyn Park's chief of police. I want to say I played this on the show on Tuesday. So for those that were watching, this is going to be somewhat redundant. But this is referring to a police officer in Brooklyn Park who was I think, detained or questioned by ICE, and the only way he got out of it eventually said she was a Brooklyn Park PD.
As this went on over the past 2 weeks, we started hearing from our police officers the same complaints as they fell victim to this while off duty. Every one of these individuals is a person of color who has had this happen to them. In Brooklyn Park, one particular officer that shared her story with me was stopped as she passed ICE going down the roadway. When they boxed her in, they demanded her paperwork, of which she's a U.S. citizen and clearly would not have any paperwork.
Yeah, what is it?
But she became concerned about...
I just got to say, what is paperwork for a U.S. citizen? I mean, we give driver's license to illegals here. Like, what is paperwork? Like, that doesn't even make sense. She's being stopped by ICE agents. She is Brooklyn Park PD. I don't know if this is in Brooklyn Park. Can you imagine being a police officer in Brooklyn Park and have a federal law enforcement agent stop you and say, give us your paperwork? That's the dystopian future we all are against, right? We're against this, right? Okay. Continue on here.
In the way she was being treated, she pulled out her phone in an attempt to record the incident. The phone was knocked out of her hands, prevented her from recording it. The officer had their guns drawn during this interaction. And after the officer became so concerned, they were forced to identify themselves as a Brooklyn Park police officer in hopes of slowing the incident and de-escalating the incident down. The agents then immediately left after hearing this, making no other comments, no other apologies, just got in their vehicles and left.
Okay, I guess we're left at a position. I mean, can you guys steel man that? I can't steel man that. So is he telling the truth? Like, do we believe him to be a liar? I don't believe this guy to be a liar. I believe him to tell us what actually happened in his community. And by the way, like when this whole stuff kicked off, I wasn't against necessarily. I should be local law enforcement doing it, but wasn't against rounding up these bad dudes. Right? But it's gone way far. I mean, we have to admit that this is a massive problem. Okay? I mean, hear me out. Like, if we start pretending like it's okay for federal agents to do what they're doing and arresting and harassing American citizens, folks, Donald Trump will be in office only 3 more years. There's no telling who's the next president. Like, we had a president before Donald Trump that literally said MAGA extremists are the largest threat to America. Like, this is going to happen to you. Right? We were all complaining about the attacks on free speech under Joe Biden. And the left was silent on it. And those of us that were wise enough to make this point, if it would even be heard on the left, is, guys, you don't want to censor our free speech here. You should not be fine with social media censoring our speech because it will be used against you. And that's the way I feel about this issue, is if we don't sound off and say this is not okay, we should not have federal law enforcement arresting U.S. citizens, infringing on our rights, harassing our citizens, this will be used against us by the next Democrat presidential candidate. Do you not see how that happens? Like, I am always going to defend liberty. I'm always going to defend rights. If somebody is here illegally, they do not have the same rights that are privileged to us American citizens. But ICE can't then just say, we can go in any other house, because you maybe get it wrong. And you just might be arresting someone that is a U.S. citizen. Oops. And I don't know how they end up, like, are they racially profiling? Is that how they got, into this position with this off-duty cop from Brooklyn Park? There's a report today that ICE was using a 5-year-old as a bait, to make an arrest. This is the problem. I see some of these stories from the left, and I don't believe them. Some of them are fake news. Okay? But I actually had to check that out. When this whole thing kicked off, I didn't believe any of these stories. I was like, whatever. The left has just lost their minds. They're not credible. But some of these are becoming irrefutable. These are U.S. citizens, and the department, or the ICE, is not helping us out at all. They're not helping. They're not being transparent with us, and they're telling us false statements. Right? Be better than the leftists. Be better than them. Be better than the protesters. They've lost all credibility. I don't remember who put this there, but you can't protest a church. You don't have a right to just shut down a church operation. That is true. And I don't mean that because according to 18 U.S. 241, which is what they should be using against criminals in Washington, D.C., but because that's just normal trespassing laws. And it is interesting that I'm pretty sure it was St. Paul. Why didn't St. Paul police charge these people with criminal trespass? Let's go to some of your comments here. Respect for America. Dems would never deploy ICE because they want open borders. Trump is doing the right thing. But you know what? They did. They did use ICE. ICE did have operations under Obama, and probably very limited under Biden. But that's true. They want open borders, right? And we do have a mess. And I did put out a video. Rand Paul's got a solution, where, you do have a lot of people here illegally, and there's just nothing, there's no way we're deporting all those people, right? That's why all of us were on board with Trump when he said, we're going to go after the bad ones first. It's like, yeah, 100%. But there is still millions that aren't. And let's just be honest who they are. The vast majority are Mexicans who, or somewhere in South America, who really can assimilate well in our culture and can be economically productive. They're not coming here just to be leeches, but they're the ones that are roofing in the summers here in Minnesota, the ones that are staffing restaurants, right? Like, we should be for that. We should be for bringing people that have cultural similarities, Catholics, pro-family people. But they did break the law to get here. And I think for that, and this was Rand Paul's solution, is you give them some kind of status, and maybe that's like a green card or visa, and they cannot be a citizen. They broke the laws, but maybe their children could. Well, that's a hell of an incentive for them to then register, whatever that system is, and then they have to work here, and they cannot get welfare benefits, right? So they work here, they become members of their community, taxes like everyone else. I think that's a great benefit. And then we don't have to worry about like large scale ICE operations, and it just or law enforcement. I think that's a reasonable solution, right? I mean, we could all pretend like, yeah, I wish they never came across the border, but that they did. This was the problem with Joe Biden, is it was such a porous border, and other people came across the border too. That was the problem. So when you have a porous border, other things pop up, and you get I think how it's funny how people just excuse this idea of sleeper cells, like terrorist sleeper cells. Like, oh, that's a conspiracy. I'm like, bullshit that is. You're saying that there weren't sleeper cells coming across the U.S. border when it was as porous as it was? Of course that happened. And I don't know if our federal law enforcement knows it. like how bad that is. But of course that happened. That's a huge freaking problem. Not to mention the child sex trafficking and drug smuggling, all that stuff that happened along the border. K-Wall for Life says, of course we're not cool with federal overreach, but where is the actual proof? Well, there's enough proof at this point, right? But that is a good point because there's so much fake news on both sides that it's hard to keep track of it. Like this 5-year-old thing, it looks like, at least the statement from ICE was that he was abandoned. So what do you do with an abandoned child? You know, some might say, oh, he was being detained, or they have a heart and they don't leave an abandoned child out in the cold. By the way, I haven't researched it enough. All I'm saying is there's a lot of fake news on both sides, so you have to take it for what it's worth. It's worth actually looking into it. Susie says, what was the outcome of the off-duty BP cop? What was the outcome of the Americans? Okay, so the BP cop, Brooklyn Park cop, once she said she was a off-duty cop, they ended up leaving her alone and taking off and doing whatever ICE was actually out there to do. And then, of course, she reported to hire. What was the outcome of the American citizen taken out in his underclothes? Probably some kind of litigation against the federal government is my assumption, because I think his rights were violated. Were they locked up and the key thrown away? Neither one. The BP cop was not. That stopped at there, and I don't know if she was ever handcuffed. Although, as he said, guns were drawn on her. Would you like a gun drawn and pointed at you by a federal agent? I wouldn't. When I'm an American citizen doing nothing wrong, like getting stopped, that's ridiculous. That would piss me off. What was the outcome? The American citizen taken in his underclothes. He was detained briefly, and then I think it was proven that he was an American citizen. Respect for America. If Trump deports illegal, complainers complain. If Trump didn't deport illegals, the complainers would still complain. Yeah, that's actually why it's so hard to even like give any credibility to the people on the political left in this country, because they're just complaining. They're anti-Trump. You know, in some regards, my critiques of Trump, I think, come from a more genuine standpoint because I voted for the guy. And where he falls short and when he steps out of line, when he does the wrong thing, I'm going to call him out on it. And he's definitely played this hand the wrong way. And so has Governor Tim Walz and Jacob Fry. Okay? Like, cooler heads need to prevail. If you're not from Minnesota and you're watching this show, I'll tell you what. It's been a really good thing that it's been negative like 100 here in the last couple days, because that's really been able to calm down tensions. You know that those protesters probably wouldn't have disrupted the church service if it wasn't for how cold it was outside. They probably would just gone outside the church. Sorry, I'm being facetious. That was obviously wrong. But criminal trespass, that is on the books here in Minnesota. That seems to be what they should have been charged with. This whole like U.S. code thing is laughable. It's just absolutely laughable. Go arrest the criminals in Washington, D.C. on that thing. They've violated our rights all the time, all day long. What are you talking about? All right. Let's end it there. I got lots to say. Thank you guys so much for tuning. Oh, let's do a post show here. I want to do a quick post show. I want to give an update on one story that we talked about. No, was it Tuesday? Thursday, whatever day it was, about some corruption inside the ranks of the Image GOP here. Yeah, let's stick with that story. Maybe another story. So if you're not a premium insider, go ahead and click on this link here. I'll drop it right now in the live chat. Or you can go to my Rumble channel and just click on join. Or if you want, you can go to truthhurtsnews.com. Check out our YouTube channel at Truth Hurts News, YouTube/@TruthHurtsNews. That's a good way for you guys to check up on our newest content. We're producing things daily. A lot of people say they like it. It's shorter videos. So yeah, please check that out. And thank you to our sponsor today, Alpine Capture in the great city of St. Cloud, and Elite Guardian Immin.com. We'll be live with our post show in 30 seconds. For everyone else, I'll see you next Tuesday. Take care.